What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Homie Hangout, where we help others move in excellence. And today I'm going to talk very briefly about the Cain Velasquez situation. I have not spoke on it yet, and I don't anticipate speaking on it again, absent some major legal developments or something. A lot of channels have covered the situation. I think everybody knows the details by now, so I'm not going to get into that. Yes, I would prefer and I support Cain getting bail and not being in custody while he fights his case. Absolutely. So I don't feel the need to, go into details expressing that and kind of taking up your guys' time with what I think most people in the country agree, which is what the predator did was out of pocket. The fact that he was released back into society and that Cain is now not released back into society reflects certainly a bias and an injustice at the core of the system. So we're all on the same page, let's assume, and that's where I'm at, so I'm not going to spend more time getting into that either. Here's the things I will say. I think Cain gets bail next month. I think it's a very high chance he gets bail next month. Now, according to the law, the only way that he can re-request bail is if some of the charges get dismissed, right? If everything stays exactly the same when he goes next month, then no, he has no opportunity to request reconsideration. But if any of the many charges he faces get dropped, then he does. And I think the public pressure is mounting and actually makes an impact, right? You got to remember, whatever folks may feel about different people with different roles in the system, I'm certainly not a fan of the system as it operates. They're still people, and they get backlash, and there's politics involved. And judges are elected, right, in Santa Clara County. And so the judge who did not grant bail to Cain, she has Judge Brown. The last couple of elections, she ran unopposed. I would expect that she'll probably be opposed this time. And, when she comes up again. And it's probably at real risk of no longer being a judge in Santa Clara County. Judge Brown's an interesting character because she actually came out of the public defender's office. So she was in the public defender's office in Santa Clara County for years prior to becoming a judge. For the most part, judges come from the DA's office, right? They come with a prosecution experience, not with the defense experience. So that's interesting. I also think it's interesting that this black lady who didn't give bail to Cain, her picture's posted everywhere. Everybody knows her name, whatnot. But who's the judge who did let out the predator with an ankle monitor, in essence? We don't know. I saw some stuff floating around online that suggests it's Jerome Nadler, I think it is. That's highly unlikely, considering that Jerome Nadler is a retired judge. His wife, I think, was the mayor of Santa Clara. And that judge is known as a liberal judge, or was known as a liberal judge. He helped to create the drug court in Santa Clara County and different diversion programs. But nonetheless, who he is not particularly relevant because he's retired. And so we don't know who that judge is. I think it's very, very, very unlikely that it's the same judge who denied bail to Cain. They operate in different departments, and judges work in silos. They don't often consult other judges in their decisions. They don't often consider what other judges have done in other cases in their decisions, unless it's a matter of lower courts and higher courts and precedent and that sort of thing. I've seen some stuff online also that says that the judge had no choice, that she had to do no bail because it is a violent and serious felony. That's not true. The bail schedule orders in Santa Clara County, as they are in place now and as they were in place, a week ago or whatever when this happened, that extends until May. And that's influenced by recent laws adjusting the discretion for judges, and also by COVID. Just for the record, I still support those laws. I think that this situation should not be used, and there's going to be an effort, right? There already is an effort for this to be used by people who think that letting people out without bail is wrong. Letting people out without bail is not wrong, in my opinion. Letting that individual out without bail is now, there's an argument to be made in that situation, right? But across the board, these bail adjustments, man, have have really benefited communities that are over-policed, over-criminalized, and over-prosecuted. And so don't fall for the okie doke. But anyways, so we know Judge Brown, right? We know the black lady who didn't give him bail. We don't know the judge who let the predator out. We do know a judge, unnamed, has requested protection, a judge involved in the Cain Velasquez case. We don't know which one. They're not revealing that. It's unclear if Santa Clara County is gonna grant that request. I would expect that they do. Such requests have been made before, in particular the NF indictments in Santa Clara County. You had judge getting concealed permits, walk around with bangers. You had DAs with around-the-clock protection. What that protection normally looks like is like a patrol car goes around your house more often. Sometimes it's actually escorted security. It varies, but it's provided by the sheriff's department. So taxpayer dollars, of course. And so there's that. I expect some of those charges to get dropped. It's been talked about on other channels, and anybody with personal experience in the system would recognize that oftentimes you're overcharged when you get picked up, right? The DA throws at you a whole range of things that they believe they can prove. And there's a couple reasons for that, right? It's more likely that you're going to be incarcerated because they say, hey, this person's facing a maximum of blah, 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 right? Life sentence or whatever. And it also gives them negotiation, a plea bargain, right? So when they come to you and they say, hey, you're facing a life sentence, man, but I'll offer you a deal of 10 years if you just plead guilty to these things. That's the exact situation I was in with my attempted murder in 1996 in Contra Costa County. When I was first arrested, based on my charges, my maximum exposure was life sentence because I had shooting into an inhabited dwelling, just like Cain Velasquez had shooting into a vehicle, right? I had carrying a firearm with intent to commit a felony. Cain Velasquez has the same charge. I had a bunch of others, inciting a riot and all kinds of other stuff, and they stacked it up. Ultimately, I took a deal for 10 years. So I think that carrying a firearm with the intent to commit a felony is a highly likely charge to be dropped. The firearm was licensed and registered. Cain Velasquez had a right to carry it. You don't have a right to carry it concealed necessarily. I don't think there hasn't been anything that said he had a concealed carry permit. Those are very difficult to get. But nonetheless, and I'm not going to get into a whole lot of the legal strategy and stuff. I'll make little comments sort of here and there, but Mark Garagos is an incredible attorney. If I was facing a case like this, that's exactly who I would want. He is very well at dealing with the media and high profile cases, obviously, but he also has a very, very, very long track record of just an excellent legal mind. He's not like some of these ambulance chaser civil attorneys you see that pop up when somebody gets killed by the police, and we kind of see the same old faces everywhere, right? Those guys are cool. I don't know them personally, and they do their thing in these lawsuits. I wouldn't suggest that they're necessarily excellent legal minds. They're opportunists, but they're opportunists in a cause that needs to be advanced. So, I mean, hey. But anyways, Garagos is a real life, real good attorney. So Cain's in good hands. I think charges are going to get dropped. I think ultimately that attempted murder goes out the window. I'm not suggesting that I think that'll happen by next month, although it's possible. I think that he winds up, pleading out to something along the lines of assault with a firearm, maybe assault with a deadly weapon. I don't think he pleads out to the whole three instances, right? There was 3 people in the vehicle. One person was shot, who was the predator's stepdad. The mother was also in the vehicle. She's the one that called 911. And then the predator was in the vehicle. There's a lot of, and this is an opinion thing. This isn't a legal thing, but a lot of folks are saying, man, where he messed up is he hit the wrong person. Now, on a vigilante justice aspect, yeah, absolutely, right? I think to the extent that Cain had ill feelings towards anybody in the car, I think it's safe to say that the height of his ill feelings would be reserved for the individual that's accused of preying on his child. And we do know now that it's Cain Velasquez's child, 4-year-old child, not some other family member. And that child had been attending that daycare for 2 years. And that the predator lived at the daycare. That's been talked about kind of already. The daycare was run by the mother and the stepfather. Now, they came out in strong support of their son. right? They came out in strong support of the predator. Man, this didn't happen. He was trying to help the kid pull his pants up or something, right? Which is kind of an old trope that predators use. Um, so there's some guilt in my personal opinion. There is some guilt and responsibility that goes there too, right? You most likely, we can't say 100%, but most likely you have a predator for a child. You have a predator for a son, and your son's a grown man, and that son living around and staying in the same place as your nursery. Allegedly, that guy has gone into these bathrooms where kids are several times, if not hundreds of times. Many kids. You got to notice something's off. Why is somebody? It says he's not employed, so by the daycare. So why is somebody who's not employed by the daycare having any access to kids that are in the daycare? Why is that person going into restrooms with those kids? Right? That's not his job. That's not his role. That's not somebody who would come up in background checks or investigations for parents and other parental figures who want to send their kids there. So there is some, in my opinion, there's some culpability. There's some accountability. There's some accountability, some responsibility on the part of the people running the daycare. And even if they didn't know that he was a predator, I know Boxer talked about this a bit on his channel, and other people have too, in terms of, trusting people to be around your children. If I ran a daycare, I'm not letting any adults around the kids that are not vetted and licensed and whatnot, right? And that would include family members and friends, and not because I think that they're predators. To the best of my knowledge, I don't associate with predators ever, right? And if I were to find out differently, then I would be very similar, feelings as Velasquez, right? But here's the thing: you should allow those folks there, right? And folks and parents and caregivers need to be okay to set these boundaries. And if you're on the receiving end of those boundaries, man, you got to be able to understand, right, that this is not about you. It's about the children. And so, anyways, I don't want to get off on a tangent in that regard, but set those boundaries, man, and telling somebody, and nah, fool, you can't be going in the restroom with kids. It's not saying, hey, fool, I think you're a predator. It's just saying, that ain't right. You know what I'm saying? Saying that you're going to take a drunk girl over your shoulder and let her sleep it off at your place. This not a good look, bro. No. Why don't you take her to her place and let her sleep it off with her people and you go back to where you came from? You know what I mean? It doesn't mean that I think that you're going to go prey on her, but just, nah, there's you opening the door. I don't know if you're going to walk through it or not, right? And so anyways, there's some folks got to understand boundaries and got to set better boundaries. But back to specifically the Cain situation, I think a lot of those charges get dropped. In terms of what the predator's facing, so the penal code is 288, right? If he is found guilty of just this one offense, I've heard some places that he has priors, and I think that was just information coming out early on. And sometimes some things get caught up in the spin of the media and everything else. So you can have credible sources that give you not necessarily credible information. I'm not aware of him having a background, and I'm not aware of him having charges back to back. I'm not saying that it's not true. I'm just saying that as the dust has settled a little bit, that is not something that is really getting any more attention. And I would expect that it would if in fact it was true. But could be, I don't know. But I don't think so. So in that case, let's say he has no background. He's looking at a maximum of like 8 years in prison. I believe it's 3, 6, and 8 is the range on on the lewd and lascivious acts with somebody under 14. That's not by, not by force, not by harm. Now, by force could also be by duress and intimidation and that sort of thing. And so maybe he stretches out to the max of 10 years. But nonetheless, the dude is not looking at a boatload of time for this offense. And that in and of itself is something to consider for people in terms of sentencing, right? And factors into how some of these predators are treated in terms of the courts and being released on bail and that sort of thing. We have to have a bigger conversation around who is and who is not a danger to the broader society. Because no matter what county you're in, no matter what state you're in, no matter what your offense you're being accused of is, no matter what the bail thing looks like, that is supposed to be a very big factor in whether or not you get bail. And if you do get bail, what is your bail set at, right? Is how dangerous are you to the public if I'm to cut you loose right now? Now, somebody who is grown and is accused of preying on a child, and the investigation unit, it's not like you just get accused of something in these cases. It's not like somebody could just chirp off and all of a sudden you're snatched up, right? Santa Clara County has an entire team that works these cases, right? And they are familiar, unfortunately, but they are very familiar in dealing with children and children's allegations and the prospect that children may misunderstand or misinterpret or may have their head filled by some bitter person or whatever. And I'm in no way suggesting that that's what happened in this case with Cain's kid whatsoever. I'm just saying in these charges in general, it's not some random ho-dunk cop that comes along and a kid says, hey, man, this happened to me. And the cop's like, hey, fool, you going to jail right now. It's more of a process. The investigation is bigger than that, which doesn't mean it always takes a long time. In this case, the case was investigated and the fool was arrested on the scene. But I guarantee you the police were there for a while. The investigators were there for a while. In the reports I've seen and the announcements out of the prosecutor's office, as soon as cops were informed, they called in their specialists. And while I'm not an advocate for law enforcement by any stretch, Santa Clara County has a team that knows what they're doing. It doesn't mean they always get it right, but I say all that to say, I'm pretty sure that they're pretty damn confident that what was alleged is true, or they wouldn't have arrested him right away, right? They just wouldn't. And so let's operate on the premise that he's guilty. He is a danger. It's a grown man preying on the most defenseless of our population, right? Like, that's 4 years old, man. You borderline toddler. So the disgust factor is there, obviously, but also just the threat factor. Now he lived here, and then, the judge says, hey, man, you can't stay there anymore. You got to go stay in Morgan Hill. But his parents stay there. His mom runs the daycare, right? How likely is it that, and the mom doesn't believe the son is a danger. The mom doesn't believe the son is a threat to the children. So how likely is it that he's really not going to be around no children, right? Is he never going to go to his parents' house through this time that he's fighting the case or whatever? These should be aggravating factors in the bail argument, right? Cain actually has factors that should be mitigating. They should be factors that make him more likely to show up, less likely to be a danger, right? He was not riding around recklessly trying to give everybody the business. Now, was his approach perhaps a little bit reckless in terms of where it happened and how exactly it happened? Sure. If he's hitting a car, could that car hit another car, knock him off the road? Sure, right? But his motivation, to whatever extent he did anything, is clearly targeted towards one individual, right? Not a hood, not a gang, not a race, not an occupation, not a religion. One person who the system believes did the unthinkable to the person he is most tasked with protecting and providing for and providing security, right? So you take that person out of the equation, and there's nothing to suggest that Cain is a danger to anybody else, right? there is something to suggest that there's other fools of danger. You know what I mean? His little perverted attractions ain't going to go away because he got popped, right? And there's not all of a sudden going to be no kids running around because he got popped. He's a danger. Cain's not a danger if you take away the person that he's targeting, and the person that he's targeting is accused of committing a serious felony. That's a strike offense, right? That 288. It's not a serious violent felony, unfortunately, but it's a serious felony, right? It's a strike. So you take him out the picture, and you ain't got to worry about Cain. Cain also is a nationally recognized figure, right? He's pretty difficult for him to just go and disappear. And he doesn't appear to have any intent to want to go and disappear, right? If he was trying to run, he wouldn't have been taken into custody without incident. I don't think that he sees what he did. And I'm not trying to get into his head, so maybe I should rephrase this, but his behavior does not suggest somebody who is unwilling to be held accountable for what he did. Whatever that accountability looks like, his behavior does not suggest that he's running from that accountability, right? So he's not a flight risk. The likelihood he shows back up in court is huge. He's represented by a huge law firm, right? Like, how often does Mark Garagos have a client that skips out on court? Probably not very often. You know what I mean? So that whole thing was distorted, and we need to have a conversation about what that threat looks like. Just because somebody engaged in an act of violence, right? Shooting, ass kicking, stabbing, whatever, does not mean that person is then inclined to go do that to everybody. You know what I mean? You got to look at the factors of what led to it. And in this case, it is dramatically clear. It is uncharacteristically clear. Rarely do you have a case that the dots are connected so well in terms of this person's targeted by this person for this reason. And that's not a wildfire that's going to spread. That's a contained fire for these reasons. And there's more than one way to fight a fire. You know what I'm saying? So we'll see what happens. I do not think that the predator is going to get their bail revoked unless they get caught doing something. If they get caught violating the conditions of their supervised release, I think, yes, there's an eagerness to incarcerate that person. And unfortunately, that didn't exist before. But that's on the judges. Judges make those decisions. And I would really, really like to know what judge decided it was okay for that dude to go. And there's a reason that we don't know that. Just like predators are protected, now those that make these decisions are being protected as well. And I don't think that's right. If we're going to blast the lady who made sure that Cain didn't get bail, and had to sit in custody, if we're going to, crucify her publicly, right, and run against her and take her job and slander her and put her name everywhere and make threats and all this other stuff, right? If we're going to do that with her, I think that same energy, not that I'm promoting violence, but just that same energy should also be directed towards the judge that let the predator out. And it should be demanded to know that information. When you go look on a court website, normally you can see that stuff. You can look up cases, you can see that stuff. Santa Clara County's playing with stuff, man, and now you can't do that. That's a problem. And it's a sign that they know that they have a problem. And they're going to try to get out from underneath this problem as soon as possible. And the way that they do that is to give Cain bail, right? Drop one of those little BS charges that he has, shooting into a vehicle, carrying a firearm, whatever, drop something. Drop one of the assault, with a firearms. Drop the assault with a deadly weapons and keep the assault with a firearms, or vice versa. Drop the attempted murder, frankly, and get a due bail. And this conversation is going to die down. Now, the system adjustment stuff, though, that conversation should continue, in my opinion, man. But we got a short memory, right? So he gets bail, he gets out. It'll be buzzed for a couple days, and then everybody's going to forget about it. until there's a court hearing, right? And that's just the unfortunate reality of our country. And that's part of the reason why systemic change doesn't happen. All they got to do is dangle another shiny object in front of people, and they're going to divert their attention. Anyways, it's the Homie Hangout. Help others move in excellence, man. That's what homies do. Help yourself at the same time because you are worth it. And I'm going to catch you guys on the next one. Stay blessed.